In the post-COVID-19 world, mental illness is more prevalent than ever. And that's particularly true for college students. But what causes mental illness and what is the physiology behind it?
There's nothing more complicated in the universe than the human brain. And so it's understandable that it's not always going to be in perfect balance and perfect harmony.
So mental illness really is driven by, in the symptoms of mental illness, really come down to how certain chemicals act in the brain.
You know, the brain tends to really be a chemical machine in a lot of ways, and the interplay between the chemicals is critical. We are continuing to learn about various aspects.
Unlike physical illness, mental illnesses have a variety of causes that often work in concert with one another.
The modern understanding of depression is that there is a neurochemical basis that we know has been demonstrated.
There's a lot of research on depression that will kind of talk about the neurotransmitters. And when we talk about medications that are often administered for depression, they are medications that directly interact with these neurotransmitters in our brain. So things like serotonin and dopamine, for example.
There is a genetic basis that has been studied through genes, and there are a couple of genes that have been identified that demonstrate those individuals are more prone to depression. And then you have the hormonal theory of depression, where you look at postpartum depression and those conditions. So that has been well studied. You know, people who have thyroid conditions, etc., are prone to depression. So it is very important to look at depression as a complex illness that has a genetic basis, that has a biochemical basis, that has a neuroanatomical, neurochemical basis, as well as a psychological and social basis.
Like depression, little is known about the physiology of anxiety. What doctors do know is many of the same systems and chemicals are involved.
For anxiety, there may be even a little bit more of these peripheral systems being involved.
There's a very physiological response that happens, and people feel it and often describe their anxious symptoms as happening in their body.
There is an impact of serotonin and norepinephrine, and we know that because of the evidence that around treatment.
Trauma and anxiety or any stress reaction has your nervous system up. Elevated into fight or flight. There's also freeze and fawn.
They might describe, my hands are sweating, my heart is beating out of my chest. They might feel in their stomach tightness. Their muscles might get tight. Their breathing might become more shallow. So it's all very physical symptoms.
While depression and anxiety are distinctly different diseases, they share several similarities.
Severe anxiety leads to depression. Severe intractable anxiety that you're not treating will lead to kind of a sense of hopelessness and helplessness and the anhedonic response.
There is also a link between mental and physical health.
There is a study in the early 2000s, the ACEs study is Adverse Childhood Experiences. All of your physical symptoms of various medical diseases go up every time you have one of these ACEs. So they're directly correlated, your physical health and mental health. There's an increase in autoimmune disorders, diabetes, asthma, COPD, heart disease.
While mental illness is most often looked at as a psychological disease or as a reaction to environment, it is important to remember there is a complex physical element to these diseases.
At the end of the day, in our brain, we have a lot of neurons in our brain, and we have a lot of chemicals that go back and forth between the neurons, and our brain is always trying to make sure we have just the right ratio of a number of these chemicals in between these neurons.
Coming up next, learn about the symptoms and diagnosis of mental illness in our Life Effects segment. If you are thinking of suicide or hurting yourself, dial 988 immediately. The Suicide and Crisis Helpline provides free, confidential support. Help is waiting 24 hours a day, every day.